Greetings, pilots. My name is She.
And I'm Kane.
Together we welcome you
to our
She
Kane podcast.
Okay, Kane, what is it about today? What can our listeners and our viewers expect?
Today, our premiere is about a pilot's attempt to deliver a good performance.
Oh, just the attempt. Why did it fail?
Well, let's say, for reasons. We'll find out what the problem was in the course of the video, but maybe we'll start by explaining what mission we're dealing with today.
As far as I could just make out, it is an escalation variant. The absolute variant of RNG. Do you think it can be found in the Steam Workshop?
Definitely. Orange has published many of its missions there, and some of them are real banger.
Okay, but what's special about this variant?
Perhaps I'll quote a few passages from the description. The initial stage of the mission is more scripted, and this mission is designed for high difficulty. It will be extremely difficult when played solo. Success relies on effective teamwork. Players must coordinate with allies to identify and exploit PAL's vulnerabilities.
Ah, I see. So there's even more emphasis on teamwork than there already is. So is the mission without PvP elements?
That's right. It's a co-op version of escalation mode with more attention to detail. Progress feels more rewarding. The scenario feels busier than the usual co-op version.
Okay, so can we expect lots of battles on lots of fronts with lots of units?
Yes, that's exactly the point. But now let's focus on our pilot. Who are we actually talking about here?
His name is Claw, Claux, Clawfitantix, or something like that.
Clawfitantix, it says here.
Yes, or something like that. In any case, I did some research on the official Nuclear Option Discord server and was able to find out a few things about him.
Yes, then let's hear it.
He's only been active in the scene for a few weeks and hasn't really been playing the game for much longer. Apparently he has fallen in love with the Chicane stealth helicopter. He funny. Chicane.
That's understandable. Oh, now I get it. Chicane podcast, Chicane stealth helicopter. Haha. Anyway, the Chicane can be a real weapon slinger on the battlefield.
Absolutely. Apparently he had difficulties getting into the game at the beginning. That's why he created his own missions to practice controlling the helicopter and handling the weapon systems.
Yes, this thing is not easy to control. At least I managed to reliably crash the Chicane into the ground or against obstacles.
So fly safe is not your motto. Well, Clawy Anything has definitely practiced for a long time and now manages to keep the helicopter in the air quite confidently.
Being able to fly does not necessarily mean being able to fly well. I've noticed that he flies over water, without cover and over 20 m high. That can quickly spell the end.
That's true most of the time. But there doesn't seem to be a bolt strike here that could pose a threat. And the enemy fleet is already busy with the Allied jets.
As far as I can tell, no enemy aircraft can be identified as a threat at the moment. But what is our pilot actually planning here?
My guess is that he will fly in an arc towards the mainland. Maybe he'll try to find cover in the hills and then take aim at the targets on the coast.
Yes, that can make sense. While his allies keep the fleet from defending the coast, he can take the defensive positions under fire. The corvettes will certainly provide support. What weapons do you think he should use to attack his targets?
Depending on how his approach ultimately goes and which targets are still ahead of him, this can of course vary greatly. Light static targets such as SAM positions or other air defenses can be targeted with linchpins. For tanks he uses AGM-40s, although it only makes sense to attack the tank from the side or behind.
Oh yes, the main battle tanks are heavily armored and can swallow dozens of missiles before they go up in flames. The sides and especially the rear of the tank are not quite as heavily armored, and AGM-40 can suffice here.
That's right, but let's pay attention to how he proceeds. He seems to want to take cover behind the small hill.
Of course, before you start dealing damage, you should make sure you don't take any damage. It is always important to prevent the enemy from having a clear view.
Okay. He was able to spot a few targets of interest. A SAM position and other air defense units. If he neutralizes them, he can destroy the rest later.
Exactly. Here he tries a light hop over the hill line. Then he shoots a swarm of linchpins.
Then he turns left and dives back under the line of the hill. A very classic maneuver.
Classic, but extremely effective, because the infrared missiles fired at him all crash into the hill in front of him.
Ooh, if that doesn't go wrong. But he seems to be regaining control of the Chicane. Are we seeing a loft now?
Yes, that's exactly what it looks like. He pulls the nose up to 60 degrees and then fires the AGM-46.
Meanwhile, Too Tall happily fires his 30mm cannon at everything he sees.
Yes, whatever is too tall about him, his brain is not.
You may be right. Clawfiantix seems to have taken a few light hits in the meantime. His right side doesn't look so good anymore.
Yes, well, it's a war game, not a farming simulation. You're bound to get the odd scratch or two. More importantly, can he do anything to help his team win?
We see how he again takes apart air defense positions. This not only gives him room to maneuver but also clears the way for bombers. So far he is alone on his front, but we are only seeing the opening here.
You're right about that. He also seems to have neutralized all serious threats by now. So now it's time to clean up.
That's right, the rest is actually no big deal. Of course, he still has to take care to provide as little target area as possible for enemies. Carefully approaching enemy positions is extremely important.
I completely agree with you. It's nice to see how he uses his remaining ammunition to wreak some havoc.
Yes, well, that's what the weapons are for. Who benefits if he brings them home again? And I think his time to return to base is just around the corner.
Yes, he can't give out many more presents. By now he's shot all the linchpins and there's only one AGM-46 left. Maybe he still has a few shots for the cannon, but it's hard to tell right now.
It looks like there is no aircraft carrier in the vicinity. What's his best option? What do you think, Kane?
I'm glad you asked, She. He currently has no option on land. Although the enemy forces are severely weakened, they have not yet been defeated for good. As you mentioned, the aircraft carrier is probably still a long way off. But what is close by are the corvettes.
That's right, I'd forgotten about that. Good helicopter pilots are capable of landing on a corvette to arm. The only question is whether our Clawfiantix is able to do that.
Then let's see how he approaches the matter.
At a speed of over 250 kilometers per hour, a landing will hardly be possible. He has to slow down sharply to have any chance at all.
It looks as if he wants to achieve this with a very hard turn.
Yes, this is one of many options, but probably one of the safest. With all the landing maneuvers, it is important to have the target in view or to be sure where it is. Keeping the helicopter steady and touching down slowly are of course also part of this.
With all due respect, it didn't look calm and controlled. He has to correct it several times. Surely that must be better.
Absolutely, Kane. Could this be due to the damage of the chicane?
Rather not. The slight damage should not have such an impact. Let's see what happens next. In the meantime, Clawfiantix seems to have regained control of the helicopter.
Look at that, a perfect landing. I didn't expect that anymore.
As the Germans say so beautifully,
Auch ein blindes Huhn findet mal ein Korn.
Oh wow, I didn't even know you could speak German. I am impressed. Now he's taken off again. What do you think is next on the program?
after his team has secured the entire coastal region, he will surely head inland. As we can see on the minimap, there are no targets yet, but it doesn't have to stay that way.
You mean, that way? Your voice was gone for a moment. Yes, that sounds like a sensible plan. This time he also seems to be flying much lower.
Understandable, as he is also flying into unknown territory. You have to be extremely careful. It is always an advantage if you discover your opponent before you are discovered. That way you have the element of surprise on your side.
It looks as if the landing troops have arrived on the coast. They offer Clawfiantix protection, and his job is to defend the ground units as best he can. But what about the damage to the chicane? Isn't it about time it gets repaired?
A repair would be better, yes of course, but where? The aircraft carrier is behind him, and there is only unknown territory in front of him. The landing units on the coast also offer no opportunity for repairs. He could fly back to a base, but during the entire flight time, he can make no contribution to the battle. It makes more sense to fly as long as possible. Above all, the damage is only minor.
He also seems to be very aware of this. He has switched on trucks as targets and flies towards them. They don't seem to pose a threat at the moment. Neither for him nor for the rest of his team.
But you know as well as I do that what is not yet is still possible. That's why I can understand that he also tackles the easy goals, especially as long as they are only easy targets. Fires are best extinguished when they are small.
He has a clear view and linchpins have a range of 5 kilometers. That should be a safe bet. But then, what will be his next target?
I think he will move south. The enemy has a fairly well-fortified position there. This must be eliminated to ensure a further advance. However, the great weakness of the chicanes will become very clear.
Oh dear, I suspect I know what you are alluding to. You mean the long travel times?
That's right, but maybe the director can do something about it.
Okay, that's better, but it still feels like it takes forever.
The director says that the playback speed is now 500%, and it is important to him that viewers can see the whole video.
Fine. We are approaching the action. It's about taking out air defenses again.
A soccer player plays soccer, and a helicopter takes out the air defenses. That's the way things go.
That's all very well, but isn't it boring in the long run? I mean, approach, aim, shoot down, turn around, return home, and start all over again.
Maybe, but apparently not for Clawfiantix. He's taking aim at a flak, and I have to say, it looks pretty solid.
I find your comparison with the soccer player, for whatever reason it has to be soccer, interesting. Can you take this comparison even further? I mean, in a soccer team, every player has a certain role to play. How can this be transferred to nuclear option?
I'll come back to answering your question, but let's just follow the story. Clawfiantix has once again moved into position to attack a SAM position, but now a radar-guided missile has been fired at him.
Yes, but it is easy for him to avert the threat by taking cover behind the hill. What are the special characteristics of such a missile?
A semi-radar guided missile, as fired by a bolt strike unit, finds its target via radar. It is not aimed at a heat signature, but at the radar signature. Radar beams do not pass through hills, so the missiles fired at Clawfiantix have lost their target. Do you know the short names of the different types of missiles?
You mean terms like Fox 1 and Fox 2?
That's right. Fox 1 are semi-radar guided missiles. Fox 2 are infrared guided missiles, and Fox 3 are active radar guided missiles. They can use their own radar to maintain targeting from a certain distance.
Oh wow, did you see him shoot a Fox 2 at the compass? And bang, a clear hit?
Yes, not bad. But you have to bear in mind that the opponents are controlled by the game's artificial intelligence. Shooting down another player in this way is not so easy. I'm curious to see how he tackles the remaining air defense.
Sure. As we speak, he seems to be close to the fight, but he's not really involved? Where is the big impact?
You mentioned the example of the soccer team earlier, so I'd like to go into it again. As a chicane pilot, you take on a certain role in the team. Of course, this can vary, but a chicane is less suitable for some things than for others. As we have already found out, it can be used quite well to fight enemy air defenses from cover.
And we seem to be witnessing another such attack. The same pattern as before. Approaching from behind cover, firing weapons, and diving behind cover again.
Well, not quite. And now the SAM position in front of him has launched a Fox 2 at him. Instinctively, Clawfiantix uses flares to disrupt the incoming missile's targeting circuitry. With success, it seems to me. Immediately followed by a swarm of linchpins.
His success seems to prove him right. After firing his load, he turns around a sharp bend, I guess to calm the situation.
I think so too. We must not forget that it can tend to be a stressful situation for a pilot to successfully carry out an attack, especially without taking any damage yourself.
Oh my god, have you heard about the players flying those suicide attacks?
If you're referring to those jerks who equip themselves with bombs and then try to score points with no intention of surviving the attack, in my opinion, that's not a good way to play in a public game. I mean, nuclear option gives everyone the opportunity to have the game experience they want. But when you join someone else's game, there is a certain etiquette.
Do you mean such unspoken rules of conduct as no friendly fire?
Exactly. It's about everyone having fun in the game. And my god, if the host doesn't care what happens in his session, it's his decision. But personally, I like it more when you try not to squander yourself, but fly properly. But that's probably more a question of taste.
And everyone should be able to enjoy the game as they please. While we were talking, Clawfiantix was busy. He attacked an anti-aircraft position and prevented a compass from taking off. However, his ammunition supply is running low.
That's true, but his first attack on the air defense position went into a civilian building. Regrettable. But the second one hits the mark and destroys the flak. Now it seems to be time for him to make his way back. Perhaps the fleet has already advanced further, so that the approach doesn't take so long.
Not so fast. It looks like he still has 8 AGM-48 in stock. The question is what he wants to do with them.
After Too Tall has destroyed an ammunition truck, Clawfiantix seems to have set his sights on the main battle tank in front of him. It's hard to tell which side of the tank he's looking at. As we discussed earlier, tanks are best cracked from the side or from behind.
Yes, but it seems to be worth a try. Now he has targeted another tank. There are more which he also targets. I think this is again about firing the missiles rather than taking them home unused.
Definitely, however, he seems to want to see what his shots do before he finally turns home.
One hit, one target left, and one AGM-48 left. He turns away, but maybe he's just trying to build up a certain distance to the target, slowing down the pace so that he can keep an eye on everything again.
Not using just the one missile would make little sense. If he wants to return to the fleet after the attack, he won't be able to find any ground targets on the way. So it's worth a try. The only question is whether his angle is right. A main battle tank can swallow several AGM-40 if it is not hit from the side or behind.
Okay, to be on the safe side, he raised the nose of the helicopter by 60 degrees. But I suspect it won't do any good. If the Chicane is responsible for taking out the air defenses, what are the tasks that it should rather not tackle?
The Chicane is little or not at all suitable for intercepting incoming fighter jets or bombers. Its air-to-air missiles have too short a range, just 5 kilometers. And of course its speed is too low for it to compete with jets. A Chicane pilot may succeed in intercepting an enemy jet, but only because the jet pilot flies carelessly or is too risk-averse.
Ah, I see. Do players actually have the option of directing the NPCs? In other words, is it possible to give them orders?
Yes, players can select NPC units via the map and then give them movement orders. This can be used to direct ships and ground troops. This can have a major impact on the gameplay and should not be underestimated.
Could it be that Clawfiantix is planning to do just that? We can see how he is constantly tracking the happenings on the map. Certainly also to keep an eye on enemy movements. But he also seems to be aiming to issue movement orders to some ships.
Yes, that's exactly what he's just done. Now, however, he seems to want to land on the aircraft carrier in front of him. That would give him the opportunity.
What the hell? Was he just attacked by a friendly teammate? Or was that an NPC?
That wasn't an NPC, so it must have been a player. Unbelievable. Where did he get that idea? I mean, we were talking earlier about the suicide bombers and how little I think of them. But this, absolutely against any fun in the game.
Yes, I can only agree with you. I mean, it couldn't have been an accident. The jet pilot attacked and dismantled the incoming Chicane for no reason at all. That's a clear example of the enemy from the inside.
It's really unfortunate that there are players like that. But as long as there is stupidity among people, some will always behave stupidly. Unfortunate, but it can't be helped. A glance at the clock tells me that we have now reached the end of our wonderful podcast.
Kane, what can I say? It was a real pleasure to go through the video alongside you. I learned a lot, and perhaps one or two viewers or listeners also gained something for themselves. Be that as it may. Thank you very much for letting me be part of it, and I would be delighted if we could continue this podcast.
Without she, there is no Kane. That's why I'm confident about the future. I also really enjoyed it, and I think we make a good team. With that in mind, thank you for your attention, and as always, fly safe, pilots.